AJ Murphy interviewing Michael Kelleher.
Hello, Mr. Argento. How are you? It's Michael Kelleher, class of '94. Hope you're doing well. I think from your back and forth with AJ, you do remember me. I'm doing well. Living in Charlestown, two kids, two boys, married. Currently a stay-at-home dad. But hope all is well with you.
Alright, what were you doing during the September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was having breakfast. I was living. I just returned a couple of months prior from New York, living in New York, back to Boston. I was living at my parents' house in Revere between jobs, and I was having coffee, and I got a phone call from a friend who worked in New York City, who told me that there was some type of terrorist attack.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks? What memories are most vivid?
At first, it was disbelief, but like most Americans, I turned on CNN, and again, like many people, broadcasters, Peter Jennings, Wolf Blitzer, people on the air, all thought it was kind of a rogue airplane that got off course, and somehow struck the one of the first twin tower. So I believed that was the case. It was just disbelief of what was actually happening while it was happening.
What do you remember about the response of the people in your local community?
I don't remember much. I mean, particularly in the local community part of that question, I don't remember much. I do remember the larger community hearing reports of Boston firefighters, neighboring firefighters driving as soon as they heard of what was going on towards the attacks, towards the World Trade Center, towards New York City, Providence, Worcester, Springfield, major, fire rescue, search and rescue teams driving towards it. But in Revere, not much. I remember locally.
Do you consider September 11th to be a pivotal event in your life?
Yes, similar to the Challenger in '86, September 11th is a day and a 3-week after period that many people compare to Pearl Harbor or beginning of several World War I, World War II. It's something that people will always look as a watershed mark in terms of American history, international history.
Did September 11th change things in your personal life or your views of the United States?
Yes, very much so. In my personal life, I had the second part of that question, but in my personal life, I was in between jobs. In between jobs, I was literally in between jobs. I came back from New York to help my parents open up an antique store in Charlestown, and my intention was to move back to New York back in the fall of 2001. So very personally, selfishly, in an odd way, September 11th drastically changed the course of my life because once it happened, I realized that New York was pretty much shut down for business, and I stopped looking for jobs in New York, and ended up finding a job in Boston and working at different jobs with the state and what have you. And now I find myself in a position where I'm at with kids and house and jobs and dogs and cars, what have you. But had September 11th not happened, I probably would have moved back to New York and got a position there in New York City. What was the second part of the question?
Did it change your views of the United States?
No.
Alright. And what did you think about terrorism before the attacks? Did the attacks change your view on terrorism?
Certainly, terrorism was once the car bombs in Israel or the Gaza Strip or Lebanon. Strange things that had happened with suicide bombers that would put explosive to their chests and destroy an Israeli wedding or what have you. Very disconnected car bombs in London, very once in a while, but very arm's length or 8,000-mile length type distance apart. And we had Terry McVeigh prior to, but that was homegrown terrorism. Never really did we think that a Middle Eastern terrorist group would strike in such an amazing, dramatic, terrorful way that they did.
Do you feel the same way about terrorism today?
It's a tough question. Yeah, no. I mean, I certainly appreciate the ability of terrorists to infiltrate our shores and our lands and our financial systems and our infrastructure. And obviously, there are multiple ways that they can inflict damage. They can go through our reservoirs and they can go through different mass transit, what have you. So I have a great appreciation of what they can do. But in terms of our vulnerability, but less of an appreciation of I think their sophistication scale is the same, just more um, tempered towards something else actually happening.
Do you think September 11th offers lessons for people in the United States?
Yes, it should. That we are not, that we are a very open society, a society that believes in individual rights, and sometimes that allows for people to have entry to this country that we may not want or may wish us ill, but but we have to keep our borders open. It's part of America's. Our America is built on fundamental rights of liberty and justice and individual expression, and how that juxtaposes against preparing ourselves or protecting ourselves from terrorist attack is something that we need to learn from. And it's a balancing that we've had in the Patriot Act and other homeland security infrastructure changes. That it's a balance that we need to figure out what the correct balance is.
And what did you think the United States response to attacks were going to be?
I thought they'd be more swift than they were. They were quite measured, considering who was president at the time. We took some time to go into Afghanistan and engage in the Al Qaeda network. So they were probably a little more measured than I would have expected the Bush administration to be, but they were swift and ironically, it took about 10 years to get the mastermind of the attack and second in command, a third in command. So it really took 10 years to get the top 3 or 4 people who were in charge of who masterminded the attack. So I think it was measured. It was probably not as dramatic, given the fact that it was George Bush was presidency, but certainly it changed the course of his presidency.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.